Hey everyone, Steve from Backcountry Gallery here, and this time I want to address a question about camera support. Specifically, when should you handhold, when is a monopod a better solution, and when is it time to go all out and turn to a tripod? For me, it comes down to a balance of 4 different considerations: my anticipated shutter speed, the amount of mobility required during the shoot, the anticipated duration of the shoot, and how far I have to physically travel with the gear. Let's take a look at all 4 factors in a little more detail. My first consideration is always shutter speed, since it directly corresponds to keeper rate. The chart you see here is based on my keeper rate with a 600 f4 lens, and the keeper rate in this graph is based on my ability to keep the rig stable enough for sharp photos, and it does not take animal motion into consideration. Your abilities may be better or worse than this, especially when it comes to handholding. I'm not necessarily the steadiest person out there. Everything that's green is a good keeper rate, roughly 70 to 95%, with the numbers getting better as shutter speed increases. Yellow is a moderate keeper rate, say maybe 30 to 70% depending on the shutter speed. Red is a relatively low keeper rate, starting at just 30% at the top and falling rapidly as that shutter speed drops. The first takeaway here is that although I can still get tack sharp photos in the yellow and even the red zones, my keeper rate is higher. I'm getting more sharp photos if I'm using a support system where I'm in the green zone for shutter speed, and the higher up in that green zone, the better. In the field, this means my likelihood of walking away happy if I only get a single shot of a given subject is much higher if I'm in the green than if I'm in the yellow or red zones. The second takeaway here is that once I get somewhere between like 1/640th and 1/1000th of a second with my 600mm lens, my shutter speed is less of a concern than the other 3 factors, regardless of what support method I'm using. However, when I'm getting into the yellow or red zones, shutter speed gets far more weight in my support decisions. Also, keep in mind that the chart I showed you was based on my 600 f4. It would look a lot different with my 300 pf or my 180 to 400. You need to learn your personal shutter speed ranges for your gear before you're really going to get this down. All that said, remember that your ability to keep steady is much different in your living room photographing your cat than on a trail with a grizzly walking towards you. As a rule, I always favor a tripod whenever I can use it, regardless of the shutter speed. I just get a higher percentage of razor sharp photos with it, especially in more like adrenaline-filled situations. After shutter speed, the next factor I consider is how much maneuverability and flexibility I'm going to require during the shoot. This is one place where I really urge caution though. Often people think they're going to need a lot more mobility than they really do. In fact, I still do most of my work either from a tripod or monopod, even the fast action work. In fact, when used and set up properly, a tripod or monopod is just as effective for tracking an animal as handholding in the vast majority of situations. What I'm really thinking about when it comes to mobility is how often am I going to have to move the gear, how difficult will that move be, and how often will I need to change height. For example, when I'm trying to maneuver through heavy brush, I usually prefer a monopod or handholding since tripod legs love to get caught on all that vegetation. I also favor monopods or handholding when I know I'll be rapidly changing height, which is often the case when shooting animals in like hilly terrain or through little windows of vegetation and trees. There are also times where a tripod or even a monopod just won't work, but those are actually few and far between. Usually it's in a situation where the animal is like really on the move, like a fox or coyote hunting for instance. I need to rapidly get into position, shoot, and then quickly move to a new position. Even a monopod setup in that scenario can be a little bit too time consuming. However, most of the time this isn't the case and I can at least use the monopod. Of course, maneuverability has to be balanced with shutter speed too. I'll sometimes use a tripod in difficult terrain if I anticipate really slow shutter speeds. After all, there's no sense hand-holding or going with a monopod if I'm not going to get sharp photos. The next consideration is a big one. How long do I anticipate this shoot will last? I can't tell you the number of times I've had plenty of speed for hand-holding and left the tripod or the monopod behind, only to regret it later. If you have a larger lens, holding it up for a half an hour waiting for a bird to fly is fatiguing to say the least. Plus, as you fatigue, your ability to hold it steady wanes. This in turn causes you to lower the lens for some relief, and the animals love to wait until the lens is pointing down before they do something really cool. So, the longer I think a shoot may last, the more support I like to have. If I think it's just a quick grab, I'll often handhold. If I think it has potential to last, which a lot of situations do, I'll at least grab a monopod. And if I think I'm going to be there for a while, it's a tripod every time. The final consideration is how far I'm traveling with the gear. Hauling a full-size tripod, gimbal, pro body, and giant lens through the woods for miles on end will make your shoulder beg for mercy. So I'll often switch to a lighter monopod setup for those times, or if it's bright enough, I'll just carry the camera and keep the monopod handy in a backpack. Of course, none of these factors stand alone, and each situation is different. The key is to learn to anticipate what you'll likely need and have it ready to go when the time comes. And the truth is, I still get it wrong sometimes. I get stuck hand-holding for long shoots as the light goes down, wishing I had a monopod or tripod as my shutter speed plummets and my keeper rate swirls around the toilet. Then there are times I grab a tripod and discover the animal I thought was going to stay put takes off and I miss the shot while getting set up. However, by quickly considering these 4 factors, shutter speed, maneuverability, duration, and hiking distance, you'll find more often than not you make the right call. By the way, I also want to mention I just launched a new wildlife and nature photography forum. If you have questions, especially questions for me, that's the best place to post them. I watch that message board all the time, and it's my first priority when it comes to answering photo questions. Plus, you can post photos, you can get critiques, and I have a place where I post quick tips that I know you're going to love, and you can only get them there. Totally free. Check it out at bcgforums.com, and I'll put a link in the YouTube description as well. Also, be sure to check out my educational materials as well. For Nikon users, I have Secrets to the Nikon Autofocus System and Secrets to Exposure and Metering for Nikon. Both of them are jam-packed with hundreds of pages worth of tips, tricks, techniques, and advice. Also, check out my wildlife photography book and video workshop for Lightroom. Tons of advice you can put to work right away. As always, I'd love it if you'd sign up for my free email newsletter on my site. That way you'll always know when I post a new video or article. And finally, remember to like, subscribe, and get notified. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.